Are you unknowingly planting garden nightmares that will haunt you for years to come? What if I told you that some of the most popular plants sold at nurseries will take over your garden, destroy your property, or create endless maintenance headaches that you'll regret forever? Today, I'm exposing the 15 plants you should absolutely never grow in your garden, no matter how beautiful they look or how much the nursery recommends them. These plants might seem innocent at first, but they're invasive monsters, maintenance nightmares, or property destroyers disguised as pretty landscaping. Whether you're a new gardener who doesn't know better or an experienced gardener who's considering one of these plants, this video could save you years of frustration and thousands of dollars in damage. Stick around because number 7 is so invasive that it's literally illegal to plant in multiple states, yet nurseries still sell it. But before we dive into these garden disasters, if you want to make smart choices and avoid costly landscaping mistakes, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people who need this information. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our weekly gardening videos. Alright, let's get into the video. Here's the hard truth. The nursery industry makes money by selling plants, not by telling you which plants will cause problems. Many plants that are terrible for home gardens continue to be sold because they're pretty, they're cheap to propagate, or customers specifically ask for them without understanding the consequences. The plants I'm covering today fall into several categories. Invasive species that spread aggressively and are nearly impossible to eradicate, plants with destructive root systems that damage foundations, driveways, and pipes, high-maintenance nightmares that require constant pruning, spraying, or cleanup, plants that self-seed so aggressively they become weeds throughout your entire property, and plants that attract destructive pests or cause severe allergies. Some of these plants might already be in your garden, and if so, I'll tell you what to do about it. For others, you'll know to avoid them when you see them at the nursery, no matter how tempting they look. This isn't about being judgmental of plants, it's about making informed decisions. Every plant on this list has someone somewhere who loves it, but for the vast majority of home gardeners, these plants create far more problems than they're worth. Let's jump right into number 15 and work our way to the absolute worst plant you could possibly add to your garden. Number 15. Mint, Mentha species. Starting at number 15, we have mint, and yes, this beloved culinary herb makes the list. While mint is wonderful for cooking and tea, planting it directly in your garden bed is a decision you'll regret. Mint spreads through aggressive underground runners called rhizomes that travel in every direction at alarming speed. A single mint plant can easily spread 3 to 6 feet in a single season, sending up new shoots everywhere. It invades flower beds, chokes out other plants, comes up through gravel and mulch, and is nearly impossible to completely eradicate once established. I've seen mint take over entire backyard areas, popping up 15 feet from where it was originally planted. Even when you dig it up, any tiny piece of root left behind will regrow. It's persistent, aggressive, and relentless. What to do instead? Grow mint exclusively in containers, large pots at least 12 inches deep. Keep the containers on patios or decks where runners can't escape into garden beds. This contains the plant while still giving you fresh mint for cooking. If you already have mint in the ground, you'll need to dig it up repeatedly over several seasons, removing every piece of root you can find. Some people resort to repeatedly dousing the area with vinegar or even carefully using herbicide to finally eliminate it. Number 14. Bradford pear, Pyrus caloriana. At number 14 is the infamous Bradford pear, once the most popular street tree in America and now widely recognized as a terrible mistake. These trees were planted by the millions in the 1960s through 1990s before people understood the problems. Bradford pears grow quickly and produce beautiful white flowers in spring, but that's where the benefits end. The wood is extremely weak and brittle. The tree structure has narrow branch angles that split easily. In storms, Bradford pears routinely split in half, often destroying property or vehicles. By age 15 to 20, most Bradford pears have suffered major structural damage. Worse, Bradford pears are now invasive across the southeastern United States. They cross-pollinate with other cultivars and produce thorny, wild offspring that crowd out native vegetation. Some states have banned their sale. The flowers also smell terrible, often described as smelling like rotting fish or dead animals. This is not subtle. It's genuinely offensive. What to do instead? Plant serviceberry, Amelanchiae, flowering dogwood or redbud for beautiful spring flowers without the problems. If you have a Bradford pear, consider removing it before it splits and causes damage. They're on borrowed time. Number 13. Vinca minor, periwinkle. Coming in at number 13 is Vinca minor or periwinkle, sold as a beautiful evergreen ground cover with lovely blue flowers. It starts out innocently enough, covering the ground where you plant it, but it doesn't stop there. Vinca spreads aggressively through trailing stems that root wherever they touch soil. It forms dense mats that smother everything underneath, preventing any other plants from growing. It escapes into natural areas, covering forest floors and choking out native wildflowers. Vinca is incredibly difficult to remove once established. The stems root at every node, so pulling it up leaves behind countless rooted sections that regrow. It requires years of persistent removal to eliminate. What to do instead? For evergreen ground cover, use native options like wild ginger, creeping phlox, or sedum. For shade, try native pachysandra alternatives or foam flower. If you have vinca, start pulling it regularly, removing every bit of stem and root. You'll need to repeat this for 2 to 3 years to exhaust the plant. Number 12. Butterfly bush, Buddleja davidi. At number 12 is butterfly bush, and this one is controversial because people love the butterflies it attracts. But here's the problem. Butterfly bush is invasive in many regions, self-seeding prolifically and spreading into natural areas where it crowds out native plants. The seeds are wind dispersed, and a single plant can produce thousands of seeds. Seedlings pop up everywhere, in sidewalk cracks, gutters, neighboring yards, and wild areas. In the Pacific Northwest and parts of the East Coast, butterfly bush is considered a serious invasive threat. Additionally, while butterfly bush attracts adult butterflies with its nectar, it provides no food for butterfly larvae, caterpillars. Native plants that support the entire butterfly life cycle are much better for butterfly conservation. What to do instead? Plant native alternatives like Joe Pye weed, buttonbush, or native milkweeds that feed both adult butterflies and their caterpillars. Choose sterile butterfly bush cultivars if you must have them. Varieties like Blue Chip and others in the Lo and Behold series are non-invasive. Remove existing butterfly bush and watch for seedlings. Number 11. Running bamboo. Sliding into number 11 is running bamboo. And this is the plant that generates the most horror stories from homeowners. Running bamboo spreads through underground rhizomes that can travel 15 to 20 feet from the parent plant in a single season. These rhizomes are incredibly strong, pushing up through asphalt, concrete, and even foundations. They spread into neighbors' yards, causing legal disputes. They're nearly impossible to remove once established. The rhizomes can be 2 to 3 feet deep and extend throughout your entire property. People have spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to remove running bamboo, requiring excavators to dig down several feet and remove every piece of rhizome. Miss even a small section and it regrows. What to do instead? If you want bamboo, only plant clumping varieties like bambusa or fargesia species that don't spread via runners. These stay in predictable clumps. Never under any circumstances plant running bamboo species like Philostachys unless you're prepared for a lifetime battle. If you have it, hire professionals with heavy equipment to remove it, or install 3-foot deep barriers and commit to cutting every shoot that appears for years. Number 10. English ivy, Hedera helix. At number 10 is English ivy, the classic ground cover and wall climbing vine that seems so elegant and charming. But English ivy is an ecological nightmare and a property destroyer. As a ground cover, ivy forms dense mats that smother everything underneath and harbor rodents. It climbs trees, eventually strangling and killing them. On buildings, the aerial roots burrow into mortar, wood siding, and foundations, causing thousands of dollars in damage. Removing established ivy from walls often requires professional restoration. English ivy is invasive throughout much of the United States, especially in the Pacific Northwest and Southeast. It escapes into forests, covering the ground and climbing trees, destroying native plant communities. The plant produces toxic berries that can poison children and pets. All parts of the plant contain compounds that can cause skin irritation. What to do instead? For ground cover, use native alternatives like wild ginger, foam flower, or creeping phlox. For climbing vines, choose native options like Virginia creeper, which doesn't damage buildings, or clematis. If you have English ivy, start removing it immediately. Cut it at ground level on trees and buildings. Let it dry out, then carefully remove it. For ground cover ivy, you'll need to dig it out completely. Number 9. Purple leucostrife, Lythrum salicaria. Coming in at number 9 is purple loosestrife, and this is the plant that's actually illegal to plant, sell, or transport in many states, yet still occasionally appears in nurseries. This beautiful purple-flowered perennial is one of the most destructive invasive plants in North America. Purple loosestrife invades wetlands, marshes, and waterways, forming dense stands that choke out native vegetation. A single plant can produce 2 to 3 million seeds per year. It destroys wildlife habitat, particularly for waterfowl that depend on native wetland plants. The plant is banned or restricted in over 25 states, yet continues to spread because people planted it decades ago, and it's still proliferating from those original plantings. What to do instead? For similar purple flower spikes, plant native alternatives like blue vervain, ironweed, or native liatris. These provide the same visual effect without ecological destruction. If you find purple loosestrife on your property, remove it immediately before it goes to seed. Dig out the entire root system and dispose of it in trash, not compost. Number 8. Norway maple, Acer platanoides. At number 8 is Norway maple, once widely planted as a street tree and shade tree, now recognized as an aggressive invasive in much of the United States and Canada. Norway maple was originally brought from Europe as an ornamental. These trees produce enormous amounts of seeds that germinate readily. Seedlings appear everywhere, in gardens, natural areas, and forests. Norway maples shade out native understory plants and create dense shade where nothing else can grow. They produce allelopathic chemicals that inhibit other plants' growth. Norway maples have shallow, aggressive root systems that make it impossible to grow grass or plants beneath them. The roots lift sidewalks and driveways, invade sewer lines, and cause foundation problems. What to do instead? Plant native maples like sugar maple, red maple, or silver maple. These provide beautiful fall color and shade without being invasive. If you have Norway maple, consider removing it and replacing with natives. At minimum, remove all seedlings before they establish. Number 7. Wisteria. Wisteria sinensis and W. floribunda. Here we are at number 7. Wisteria. The cascading purple flowers are undeniably gorgeous, but wisteria is a monster vine that destroys everything it climbs on. Chinese and Japanese wisteria, the most commonly sold varieties, are aggressive, invasive, and destructive. Wisteria vines can grow 25 to 30 feet in a single season. The woody stems become as thick as tree trunks and incredibly heavy. They pull down fences, gutters, and arbors. They strangle and kill trees. They pry siding off houses and rip down porch railings. The vines are virtually indestructible. Cut them down and they resprout from the roots. The seeds remain viable in soil for years. Wisteria spreads into natural areas where it smothers native vegetation. The plants also take 7 to 15 years to bloom, so people wait patiently, only to find the plant has destroyed their arbor before it ever flowers. What to do instead? If you must have wisteria, choose American wisteria, Wisteria frutescens, which is native, less aggressive, and much better behaved. Better yet, choose native alternatives like trumpet vine, Campsis radicans, or crossvine, Bignonia capreolata. If you have invasive wisteria, be prepared for a multi-year battle. Cut it repeatedly, paint cuts with herbicide, and remove every seedling. Number 6. Lily of the Valley, Convallaria maialis. At number 6 is Lily of the Valley, beloved for its fragrant white bell-shaped flowers. But this plant spreads aggressively through underground rhizomes, forming dense colonies that crowd out everything else. Lily of the Valley escapes its original planting area and pops up throughout the garden, in lawns, and in neighboring properties. It's extremely difficult to eradicate because any piece of rhizome left behind regrows. The plant is also highly toxic to humans and pets. Every part contains cardiac glycosides that can cause serious poisoning or death if ingested. The bright red berries are particularly attractive to children. What to do instead? For fragrant shade-loving ground cover, choose sweet woodruff or native wild ginger. For spring flowers and shade, plant native bloodroot or Solomon's seal. If you have Lily of the Valley, constant removal over several years is required, digging up every piece of rhizome. Number 5. Privet, Ligustrum species. Coming in at number 5 is privet, commonly sold as hedging plants. While they create dense hedges, privets are invasive across much of the southern and eastern United States, self-seeding prolifically into natural areas. Privet requires constant shearing to maintain as a formal hedge. We're talking monthly pruning during the growing season. Left unpruned, they become leggy and unattractive. The flowers produce a cloying, unpleasant scent that many people find offensive. Worse, the flowers trigger severe allergies in many people. Birds eat the berries and spread seeds everywhere, resulting in privet seedlings throughout your property and beyond. What to do instead? For hedging, choose native alternatives like American holly, inkberry holly, or wax myrtle. For formal hedges, use boxwood or yew. These require less maintenance and aren't invasive. Number 4. Yellow archangel, Lamium galeobdolon. At number 4 is yellow archangel, sold as an attractive variegated ground cover for shade. This plant is an absolute nightmare that will take over your entire property if given the chance. Yellow archangel spreads through stems that root at every node, forming impenetrable mats. It spreads into lawns, gardens, and natural areas. It's incredibly difficult to remove because pulling it leaves rooted nodes everywhere that regrow. The plant is invasive in the Pacific Northwest and other regions with mild winters. Once established, it requires years of persistent removal. What to do instead? For shade ground cover, use native foamflower, wild ginger, or native pachysandra. If you have yellow archangel, begin systematic removal, pulling every piece of stem and watching for regrowth. Number 3. Chameleon plant, Houtoinia cordata. Here we are at number 3, chameleon plant. This colorful ground cover with variegated red, green, and cream leaves looks beautiful in the pot at the nursery. Planting it in your garden is like releasing a kraken. Chameleon plant spreads through underground rhizomes that travel at incredible speed. It pops up everywhere, through mulch, gravel, lawn, flower beds, and neighboring properties. The rhizomes can be a foot deep, making removal nearly impossible. People report fighting chameleon plant for 10+ years, unable to fully eradicate it. It's considered one of the most regrettable garden plants people have ever introduced. What to do instead? For colorful ground cover, choose ajuga, which spreads but is manageable, or use mulch in container plants. Never plant chameleon plant in the ground, only in pots, and even then, be cautious. Number 2. Japanese knotweed, Falopia japonica. We've reached number 2, Japanese knotweed, possibly the most destructive invasive plant in the developed world. In the UK, having knotweed on your property can make it unsellable because mortgage companies refuse to lend on properties with it. Japanese knotweed grows 3 to 4 inches per day at peak growth. The rhizomes spread 20+ feet from the parent plant and can grow through concrete foundations, driveways, and asphalt. They exploit any crack or weakness in structures. The plant is nearly impossible to kill. The rhizomes extend 10 feet deep and spread horizontally throughout your property. Professional removal often costs $10,000 to $50,000, plus requiring years of herbicide treatment or excavating and removing all soil to depth. In many areas, disposing of soil contaminated with knotweed rhizomes requires special hazardous waste handling. It's that serious. What to do instead? Never, ever plant Japanese knotweed. If you find it on your property, contact your local agricultural extension immediately. Professional treatment is essential. This is beyond DIY capability. Number 1, bishop's weed/goutweed, Egopodium podagraria. And finally, taking the number 1 spot as the absolute worst plant you could ever introduce to your garden is bishop's weed, also called goutweed or snow on the mountain. This variegated ground cover is sold widely at nurseries as a solution for problem-shady areas. It's actually the problem itself. Bishop's weed spreads through aggressive rhizomes that fragment easily. Every tiny piece of root left in the soil regrows. It forms dense colonies that choke out absolutely everything else. It invades lawns, flower beds, vegetable gardens, and natural areas. The plant is virtually indestructible. Digging it out scatters root fragments that multiply the problem. Herbicides are only partially effective. People report battling bishop's weed for 20+ years without fully eliminating it. Landscape professionals call it the biggest mistake homeowners make. Gardening forums are filled with desperate pleas for help removing it, and it's considered the most regrettable plant people have ever added to their gardens. What to do instead? For shade ground cover, use literally anything else. Native wild ginger, epimedium, native pachysandra, or just mulch. If you have bishop's weed, you're facing a long battle. Persistent removal of every shoot for 3 to 5+ years. repeated applications of herbicide on regrowth, or in severe cases, covering the area with thick black plastic for multiple seasons to starve the roots. And there you have it, the 15 plants you should never, ever grow in your garden. From aggressive ground covers like bishop's weed and chameleon plant, to destructive trees like Bradford pear and Norway maple, to invasive monsters like Japanese knotweed and running bamboo, these plants create far more problems than they're worth. The common thread among all these plants is that they're sold at nurseries despite being terrible choices for home gardens. Don't trust that everything at the garden center is a good idea. Do your research before buying. If you already have any of these plants, don't panic, but do start planning their removal. The longer they're in your garden, the harder they'll be to eliminate. Remember, a beautiful garden is also a manageable garden. Choose plants that stay where you put them, don't require constant maintenance, and won't invade your neighbor's property or natural areas. Thanks so much for watching this important video. If you found this information helpful and want to avoid costly gardening mistakes, please give this video a big thumbs up and share it with other gardeners who need this warning. And make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our gardening tips. Drop a comment below. Do you have any of these plants in your garden? Are you battling any of these invasive nightmares? Share your horror stories and warnings with our community. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you in the next video. Happy gardening with the right plants.